Today, we're diving into a strategic approach for dealing with advanced stage cancer, and this is all based on the work of Dr. Eric Berg. Now, we're not going to focus on a bunch of overwhelming statistics. Instead, we're going to lay out a clear, actionable strategy. So let's jump right in.
Getting a diagnosis like this, it's terrifying. It's confusing. You probably have a dozen different opinions flying at you all at once. It's completely normal to feel totally overwhelmed. But according to Dr. Berg, this is the exact moment for strategy, not for fear.
And this quote right here, this is the heart of the entire strategy. It completely reframes the situation. You're not just a passive patient, you're an active participant. The whole idea is that cancer is actually a sick, vulnerable thing, and you have the power to create an environment where it just can't survive. So, here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start by looking at cancer's hidden weaknesses and what causes it in the first place. Then we'll get into the specifics of Dr. Berg's rotational diet, talk about fasting, and we'll wrap it all up with a strategic checklist to bring it all together. All right, first things first, let's talk about a major shift in thinking that really goes against some of the common advice you might hear. Dr. Berg points out that this is the question every patient asks, but so often the answer they get is a really dismissive, "Oh, it doesn't really matter." Well, this strategy is built on the complete opposite idea. What you eat isn't just a small detail, it is a central pillar of your entire fight. Okay, so to build any good strategy, you have to know your opponent's weaknesses, right? And cancer, for all its scary reputation, has some really critical vulnerabilities we can exploit. Now this right here, this is the key. This is cancer's Achilles heel. It's a very, very sick entity, basically living on the edge, and this inflexibility is something you can actually use against it. So what does that even mean? Well, think of it this way. Your healthy cells are like a hybrid car. They can run on gas, which is sugar, or they can switch over to electric, which is fat or ketones. But most cancer cells, they're like an old, beat-up, gas-guzzling car. They are overwhelmingly dependent on one fuel source, glucose. So here's the kicker. By controlling the fuel, you put immense stress on those cancer cells. And this whole metabolic problem, it starts right here with damaged mitochondria. See, when these little energy factories in our cells break down, the cell has to revert to this ancient, super inefficient way of making energy that relies on sugar. And to get enough fuel, it starts growing like crazy to hog all the resources it can find. So what's causing this mitochondrial damage to begin with? According to Dr. Berg, it usually comes down to 4 chronic conditions that create the perfect storm for cancer to develop, often over decades. First up is chronic insulin resistance, which just floods your body with sugar and growth factors. Second, you have chronic inflammation, which creates this low oxygen environment that cancer absolutely loves. Third, a disrupted microbiome, which means the good gut bacteria that are supposed to protect you are out of whack. And fourth, chronic toxicity. Think long-term exposure to things like alcohol, smoking, or pesticides. All 4 of these roads lead right back to that mitochondrial damage we just talked about. Okay. So understanding the problem is one thing, but now we get to the really exciting part, the core of the strategy, the actionable plan to actually fight back. The goal here isn't to just stick to one single diet. Why? Because cancer is smart, it can adapt. So the strategy is to constantly rotate between 3 different dietary phases. This keeps the cancer cells stressed, confused, and unable to ever get comfortable. The whole cycle kicks off with phase 1. For about 3 to 5 days, you're going into extreme restriction. We're talking very low protein, very low fat, and very low carbs. You're thinking vegetable soup, steamed greens, maybe a few olives or a little avocado. The whole point is to severely limit the resources that are available to those cancer cells. Next, for about 1 to 2 weeks, you shift into phase 2. This is where you bring back moderate amounts of protein and healthy fats. This phase is all about supporting your body, focusing on foods that are rich in polyphenols. Those are powerful plant compounds with anti-cancer properties, while still keeping the cancer's main fuel source in check. And this is where the strategy gets really clever. Just when the cancer might be getting used to that phase 2 diet, you switch it up again for another 3 to 5 days. In phase 3, you actually increase your protein while keeping the carbs low. This sudden change is another shock to the system, and it prevents adaptation. After this, you cycle right back to the beginning, to phase 1. Now, the rotational diet is huge, but it's not the only tool in the toolbox. Dr. Berg recommends a couple of other powerful tactics to really amplify the stress on cancer cells.
Prolonged fasting, meaning going without any food for several days, is one of the most powerful ways to starve cancer cells of fuel. But let's be real, that's not possible for everyone, especially for someone who's already lost a lot of weight. So, a great alternative is what's called the fasting mimicking diet. You're still eating a few calories, but it's very low in protein, carbs, and fat, and it can produce really similar anti-cancer effects.
And you can't overlook key nutrients. Dr. Berg is very specific here, recommending a minimum of 30,000 IUs of vitamin D3 every single day. Vitamin D is absolutely critical for supporting your immune system and for helping to heal those damaged mitochondria.
All right, let's pull all of this together into one final strategic checklist that you can actually use.
Okay, so here's your strategic recap from Dr. Berg. First, you implement that 3-phase rotational diet and bring in some form of fasting. Second, you support your body with high-dose vitamin D3, get more oxygen through light exercise, and add in key nutrients from foods like fish and cruciferous veggies. And of course, this is incredibly important, a huge disclaimer. This information is for educational purposes. You must always check with your doctor before you implement any new health strategy, especially if you're undergoing medical treatment. What this explainer has really done is lay out a clear strategy, one that's based on stressing cancer's known weaknesses. It's about putting the power of your daily choices back in your hands. So the final question for you to think about is, when you look at those 4 root causes, insulin resistance, inflammation, microbiome issues, and toxicity, which one can you start to address today?